Hello and welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and this week we are going to be joined in Peggy by Sandy Hamilton, somebody who I think most people would agree is an absolute icon of the Morris Minor Owners Club, and he and his late wife Rosie did so much for the club over the years, including things like the Commonwealth Games display, the Lord Mayor's parades, I believe, running several of the Miners' overseas tour events, helping with the setting up of the Morris Minor Young Members, as well as being really key members of their local branch. So all round, probably loads of other things that I've forgotten, but really incredible people who have been really key in helping the club reach its incredible 50th anniversary celebrations this year. So I was really keen to catch up with Sandy, hear some of his memories of these brilliant little cars, as well as his years in the club. And I hope that you guys enjoy hearing his stories as much as I did over National Weekend. So without further ado, let's get Sandy in the car and hear some of his fantastic stories. So we're joined by Sandy Hamilton, who many people in the club will be familiar with because you've been a familiar face for many a year.
1989 in September I joined for the first time.
And what was it that made you join the club?
I needed a stress buster from working in the City of London in finance and highly stressful, and I needed something that was still stimulating. I'd known Morris Minors since I was 10, when my father bought a brand new Series 2 four-door, the very first Series 2 in the Scottish Eastern Borders. And this was when cars were beginning to come available again in the home market. Restrictions were being lifted. There was joy about the new Elizabethan era. The Queen had acceded to the throne in February 52. Winston Churchill was back in charge of the government. There was a more buoyant atmosphere in the country. And while we still had rationing, there was a prospect of the economy growing sufficiently to allow easing of wartime restrictions, which, and actually in peacetime from 45 onwards, were more stringent than they had been during the war. Not that I remember it, although I was around. I was in Arromanches a few weeks ago, and there were some American tourists came out of the museum, and they said, "Oh, and do you remember all that?" I said, "Yes, I do. I was around at the time, but on D-Day, 6th of June, I was only about 9 months old."
It's quite tricky to remember some of that stuff.
Exactly. So I was precocious, but not that precocious. And but the father's Minor arrived in the boards. It was driven up from Cowley the day after it was built on the 23rd of May, 1953, driven up 320 miles, very carefully, I'm told, because the mechanics, the staff from the garage, knew that it was going to go to the parish minister, and they didn't want to be accused of having overdriven the minister's new car. And it was checked, licensed on the Friday, and it was driven round to the garage at the back of the house, which was opposite the Nuffield dealer, and it was ready to be taken out on Sunday morning, the 1st of June, after Father had done all the services. And that was after lunch, and it was pouring with rain. Taken out in the rain, which up into the Cheviot Hills in some villages, just to get familiar. And the next day was Coronation Day. Monday, the 2nd of June. And it was raining as well. And the televisions were a rarity, not just because they were expensive, but there was no signal. Our area in the Eastern Borders, it was a desert. And besides which, the church had not seen fit to endow the manse with electricity. That arrived in 1956. But we had gas, plumbed gas, but I don't yet know of any gas televisions. And our radio had a big 90-volt accumulator and wet acid battery for the low tension. And I was a great avid listener of the news.
Yeah.
That was my information. It was received, world news, and there were newspapers. So I could read, I listened, and that's how I became informed.
Yeah. And
not the internet news, but the BBC,
yeah,
which then had a very good reputation. Supposedly it does have a reputation now, but perhaps not what Sir John Reith, or Lord Reith as he became, had intended when he set out to educate, entertain and inform.
Yeah.
I think the word indoctrination might now follow, but that's me getting on a hobby horse.
Yeah, let's go back to the Morris Minors,
the Morris
I think.
Minor
So did you have one in 1986?
I had, by 1961, I came back at the age of 18 and started working in the town, in the bank, local bank, and I did a lot of travelling around. My first car was actually a 1946 Standard 8.
Yeah.
And it was a classic one where it had no prospect of passing what was then the 10-year test and became the 7-year test. It still had cable brakes, dip and switch headlights when the offside one went out and the near side one, mechanically the reflector dipped.
Yeah.
Very archaic. And I found out that the cable brakes, the offside front one wasn't working at all. And it had been severely bodged to keep it going. It's the only time I've seen a side panel, it was a 2-door, behind the door and adjacent to the rear seat. It always had a matte finish in the black. And when I took the internal panel off, I discovered it had been filled with dried grass, over which plaster of Paris had been put, smoothed down.
That's an interesting fix that I don't think I've ever heard of. And calling it a fix is probably a bit of a stretch as well.
Well, it was creative at a time of material shortages, and people were inventive and would do anything to get cars going. I knew, not that mine had it, but I knew of punctured tyres being filled with scrap cotton and wool and so on to pad it out and give it some semblance of air, and that would keep them rolling for another while. And they were usually pretty bald.
Yeah.
They probably had less rubber on them than I have in my head. Hairs in my head now. But the Standard 8 eventually succumbed to old age.
Yeah.
And was taken to the local scrapyard. And I ended up with a 1957 Austin A35 4-door.
Oh.
And that did me very proud from about 1964 up to the next year when I was visiting a branch in southwest Scotland. I was sent on relief staff, and early in the morning, about coming up for 7 o'clock, I rolled it.
Oh.
A35s,
they're quite
lusty little things, especially with a 948, because it's relatively light.
Yeah.
And by this time, it was we were part of BMC.
Yeah.
And the miners being endowed with a 948 engine, which is much better than the 803.
Yeah.
Because that had been designed for the A30, which was a full 200 weights in analog measurement, or 100 kilos.
Yeah.
And that was significant because the dimensions of the bearings and the stress parts and the gearbox were perfectly suited to this little peanut, as it's now been called, and perfectly tailored for that weight by the engineers, who were former aircraft engineers at Bristol Aircraft during the war. And they got involved with stress skin and monocoques.
Yeah.
Whereas the minor, as we all know, is unitary construction.
Yeah.
Deriving its strength from the bulkhead and the sills, and it would be considered over-engineered.
Yeah.
but it's sturdy. That's why they last.
Mm.
And lived up to the Nuffield slogan for Morris, quality first.
Yeah.
And that's what attracted my father to buy one, because my mother had received a legacy from her late father, and coincidentally her birthday was the 23rd of May. She never knew that the Miner was built on her birthday.
Oh, wow.
And paid for with a legacy from her late father.
Yeah.
So that was a little connection I found out thanks to the British Heritage Archives at Gaydon.
Yeah.
And they allowed me to look through the records and see when it was built and when it was dispatched. And that's when I found out it was the very first Series 2 in that part of Scottish borders.
Yeah.
And I remember we had a little trouble with the gearbox and the speedometer. And I think we had 3 speedometer heads in the first 2 years. And the oil was travelling up the cable.
Oh.
And contaminating the head. And it was the sealing. And I remember the old school mechanic in the garage. I said, these modern Austin gearboxes, they're nae as good as the Miner gearbox, as the Morris gearboxes. It's these plastic seals instead of leather. And that, of course, an archaic.
Yeah.
Progress and development obviously makes plastic seal much more sturdy and long.
Yeah.
But then life was relatively unstressed, and that was perfectly acceptable to have leather in seals.
Yeah.
And old components. But the Miner survived. Father had it up until 1969, and it had a gold seal engine at about 75,000 miles because it was absolutely worn out.
Yeah.
And the gearbox about the same time. The engine had been decoked at about 45,000. But then take a family car with 800 cc's and of that design, it was overstressed.
Yeah.
So I knew about the 803 engine when I had my A30, and it was very spirited driving in the 35 rather, and it was mended.
Yeah.
I'd twitched on damp surface in the morning. I corrected it, but it actually I caught it, but it whipped round,
Yeah.
slid backwards down the road in a little curve till it hit the curb and tipped.
Yeah.
And as it tipped, just beside the passenger door was a very large telegraph pole. So it pivoted on the roof guttering and the top of the door, and the momentum carried it up the bank at the side of the road on its side. And when it stopped, I was on my side, held in by the seat belts I'd had installed 2 weeks previously.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I thought, oh heck, what have I done? And then I opened up the door and popped out of the hatch and stood wondering. And long story short, somebody came along, called me. Was I all right? I said, yes. He said, well, there's a house over there. They'll be awake. Go and get the phone for the breakdown.
Yeah.
And they came out a few miles from the market town that I was heading for, and he pulled it off the bank, saw one wheel was wobbly, and changed it for the spare, and said, follow me. So I hopped in the car and drove. And he said, we'll check it over. You go to the station hotel and have breakfast, and you can phone home, tell them everybody's all right and where you're going. So I did that.
Yeah.
And I continued driving it. And there was a bungee strap to hold the bonnet shut, because the little A35's bonnet, the aperture was no longer
The correct
bonnet
shape.
size. And the door at the top
Yeah.
had sprung because the front windscreen was lozenged slightly. So, but anyway, it got repaired. I was away at a Scottish Island branch for 6-7 weeks, and it was repaired while I was away.
Yeah.
But I then came back from there and picked up the car, used it for a few weeks, and then sold it, because the branch to which I was heading on the faithful morning, the assistant manager had been appointed a manager in another Scottish branch and wanted to sell his Wolseley 1500.
Oh,
So
bit more oomph.
I agreed to buy it.
Yeah.
Of course, Morris Minor underneath, basically.
Yeah.
And I had that until I left Scotland in 1966. Came to London within a month. In fact, in July 66, I met Rosie, my now late wife, for the first time in London. Her mother was a Scot, so I said, okay, she's half decent.
Yeah.
And I was posted to Freeport, Grand Bahama. I left the Wolseley with my father to go alongside the Morris Minor.
Yeah.
And while I was out in Freeport, I had 2 Morris Minors there at the same time, a 2-door and a 4-door.
Yeah.
And a friend, a school teacher and neighbour, he had 2 Morris Minors as well.
Yeah.
So we had 4 Morris Minors they called it a duplex. That was a semi-detached bungalow.
Yeah.
Because it's very American style. And there was quite an interesting expatriate classic vehicle club, and the Grand Bahama Motorsports Club, grandly named. And I also had a Singer Gazelle.
I'm a fan of those.
An easy drive with the electric automatic transmission. That had come from Bermuda, like the Morris Minors, because Bermuda, in the middle of the Atlantic, North Atlantic, had very small, very restrictive ownership. 1 car per household.
Yeah.
And you had to, if you wanted a new car, you had to dispose of your car, existing one, to a household that didn't have a car, or not have one for 12 months. So the alternative was you shipped it off the island, or they cut it up and dumped it at sea in a deep trench. Now this Singer Gazelle, very good. And there's a good market for right-hand drive cars throughout the Caribbean. And got the Singer Gazelle, and the easy drive transmission was great, worked very well. And we won the treasure hunt in the Grand Bahama Motorsports Club, Rosie and I, in the Singer Gazelle.
How did you find the Gazelle versus the kind of BMC stuff?
It was well made. I had a friend, and he's still around. We've known each other since 1955. He had a Hillman Minx 3A.
Yeah.
So I knew about the Minx. And I also, I was asked by one of my father's parishioners, a middle-aged lady, let's put it that way, to if I could supervise her in her driving. And she had a Hillman Minx 3A with the floor change.
Yeah.
So they were solid.
Yeah.
They were probably the equivalent, or the roots equivalent, and well engineered, of the Austin A55 Cambridge. That was the pre-Farina one.
Yeah, same sort of size, same
Yes,
sort of
it's
build.
a family market,
yeah.
a 1500cc, and it was quite a solid car. And they always changed every year. The styling changed. There were new variants, and that was just quite. I was a car anorak, a freak, because of course, post 1945, new cars were a huge rarity.
Yeah.
And the Minor was, I suppose, to the motoring public, the Minor must have been like the pilots in the RAF. They'd started off in the RAF in 1930s in biplanes and piston engine biplanes. By the end of the war, some of them were flying jet aircraft. And the Minor was as much an advance in engineering terms, automotive engineering terms, as the jet-engined airplanes were.
Yeah.
And the road holding, we might call it shape anachronistic, but it's a rounded shape. It's comfortable. Its road holding is excellent compared to the upright leaf-sprung cars that bobbed around and rolled and staggered to reach their maximum of about 50, 55, and even then you were hanging on for dear life. The Minor, motorsport, still modified today. And I can mention Jack Daniels, of course, was the noted draftsman who supported Isigonis. Isigonis had the ideas And I remember speaking to Jack, and he said, well, I was sort of the perspiration behind his inspiration.
Yeah.
And I was at a Dorset branch rally in 2000, and Jack was there. He lived in Dorset, and he supported the Dorset branch. And he always came along to their annual rally to present the prizes. And this would be the summer of 2000, and the Mini, well, the Isigonis Mini had just gone out of production, and the A series had just gone out of production.
Yeah.
And I saw Jack there looking and wondering at a black Miner pickup that had been heavily custom, a V8 engine, and it had all sorts of air suspension. And he's looking at that. He said, I think that's marvellous.
Yeah.
He said, it's 19 wartime, end of the war and post-war. We were working away on the Miner with Isigonis, and there was Jack, and there was Ledge Job, and that team. And he said, I think it's marvellous that all these years later, young people are still interested in this little car and developing it and innovative. And I think it's marvellous that they can do this. And so whenever anybody says to me, ooh, this Miner's been bodged and it's been spoiled and ruined, I said, the draftsmen who helped to design it thought these innovations, still using their ideas, were marvellous.
Yeah.
And
there's no better argument than that, is there, to show them up? Absolutely.
And at that time, I was interested in the Miner's, Morris's abortive attempt to re-engine the side valve. And develop an overhead version of the side valve engine.
Yeah.
And that was almost ready for production. It was, in fact, about to enter production for the 1952 model year.
Yeah.
And that would have enabled the Traveller to be introduced and the commercials, the van and the pickup, because the side valve engine couldn't pull the skin off a rice pudding.
Yeah.
Even if it had been overcooked. It was just too weak for that.
Yeah.
But the overhead valve version of that, which powered the Wolseley 8, that was to be introduced in 1939, postponed until 1946 because of circumstances, and then introduced from 46 to 48. It was a sturdy little engine, and Jack told me, he said, I borrowed one of the development Miners with this engine. And I drove it down to Cornwall and up over the moors in Devon, and it was overtaking everything. It was a superb engine.
Yeah.
But, he said, it was the equivalent of the 948A series. But he said, this engine that we developed was at the end of its life. It had no more potential. It had based on a design of the mid-1930s, and that was it.
Yeah.
But we thought that this would take sort of an updated mid-period Miner, introduced around about 52, and in 56 we would have a rebodied Morris Miner Mark II, using the shell that became the Wolseley 1500. That was to be the Miner's replacement. Mark II Miner from 1956, taking it into the 60s.
Yeah.
But that all changed when Lord Nuffield went along, didn't tell the board, didn't tell his engineers, to Leonard Lord at Austin, and agreed to sell the company and merge. And then came back and told the engineers. But he said that was actually, we met in December of 51 and to decide what engines would power the combined ranges. We chose the A series, 803, for the small car.
Yeah.
That was a no-brainer, because it had a bright future. And he said, here we are in 2000, it's just gone out of production.
Yeah, such an incredible run for it.
They chose the B series, which was the developed version of the Austin Devon 1200 engine from 1947, 46-7, and the C series, which went into the 2.6 litre 6 that went into the sports cars, the Westminster, the Wolseley, the Riley and so on, was actually a Morris Engines design, and the only one that was sufficiently developed that it would waste money to throw it away or start with an Austin engine. And they were 4 cylinders only. So that was the only Morris. And there was a D series, which was actually the 4 litre that went into the Princess and the Sheer line and the big limousines and trucks, of course. So that was, excuse me, that was what happened, and they put that plan into fruition through 1952.
Yeah.
The 803 engine miner was introduced in July 52 for export markets only. And we continued in Britain to get the side valve engine up until January 53, when there was production of the A series had been geared up sufficiently that they could supply the whole range.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history. The 948 engine in 1956 in the miner gave the miner the power boost and the performance that Morris had planned for 1951-52.
Yeah.
And thereafter it made money. It was a money spinner for BMC. But because of Leonard Lord's known antipathy to Lord Nuffield, he was a brilliant production engineer. Leonard Lord was, but he was a bit of a flawed personality. He had an inferiority complex, I'm quite convinced. And while he was brilliant there, he undervalued himself.
Yeah.
And he, with senior people, with people of more elevated social status, he felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, but he tended to bully his staff. He was notorious for firing people at no reason.
Yeah.
He fired Gerald Palmer, who was an engineer who had started suspension engineer with Morris in the 30s, and he was hired by Jowett in 1940-ish to develop the Jowett Javelin engine, body, advanced engineer, superb design. And he then came back to BMC in 53-ish when Isigonis left temporarily to go to Alvis.
Yeah.
He didn't like the new arrangements of BMC. And he developed what became the Wolseley 444 and the Magnet, similar body styles. And he then went on to develop an enlarged version for the Austin, Westminster, and the Wolseley 690 Riley Pathfinder. And when there was an engineering problem on that, he got blamed for it. And he got fired.
Yeah.
And thereafter he spent the remainder of his career working on trim and other fripperies for Vauxhall Motors. I remember John Presnell going to visit him and for one of his articles in Classic and Sports Car, and he said, what a waste of a career, brilliant engineer, but just sidelined because of one man's insecurities.
You've got such a breadth of knowledge of cars and the whole kind of history that goes into where they went, and it's fascinating to listen to. But yet, you've really honed in, I feel, in your life on Morris Miners. Yes. What is it about them that stood out to you of all of this stuff, all of this automotive?
It's a brilliant concept. It's compact. Isigonis further developed in the Mini and got 4 adults within a 10-foot long car.
Yeah.
But his idea of good road holding, roadability, some of his ideas are a little eccentric. He didn't believe in radios because they were distracting and never had ashtrays. Well, he was a big smoker, so he just chucked his fags out of the window. So he was a real mixture. He was, not surprisingly, some people in Cowley called him Aragonis instead of Isigonis. But the miner was I've spoken to many people. People see it as a friendly, unthreatening shape.
Yeah.
You'd almost want to go and hug it.
Yeah.
But it's also very forgiving. You can neglect maintenance and it'll still go along.
Yeah.
The timing can be out in the A series engine substantially, but it still starts and chugs along. It's easy to drive. The steering is light. So are the controls. Although I do hear from some younger elements that they find the clutch very heavy because they're used to power steering and power everything, being able to twiddle. The steering, when it's properly set up, is superb.
Yeah, I had mine redone, and when it came back to me, completely different because it had just not been sat right.
And usually what the problems people find are caused by replacement components that are not up to scratch, adjustments that are well out, garage staff who are more fitters of parts than engineers who understand how they work. But there are so many knowledgeable amateurs, and within MMOC, so many people of all generations, from teenagers upwards, and I'm very heartened to note that the generations that are coming are just as keen to learn how to look after and pass on the knowledge and the skills. And my generation, the post-war generation, let's say post-45, we are more than delighted to introduce the younger people, because they are the future of our car, and that the friendly, unthreatening shape. When you look at a modern SUV, something like, I'll mention a name just because it's particularly bluff, the J-Coup, the Range Rover Cup. It's like a brick outhouse on wheels, and it's great, aggressive. Now I know that might appeal to a certain generation in Southeast Asia, that male and assertive, but it's not a family trait. It's not a pleasant thing to drive. It's just big. Oh, I feel safe in this. Yes, but if you hit something else, nobody else is going to be safe.
No.
So
it's a big problem, isn't it? Yeah. And you think about how your accident with the A35, how you came out of that, when if that was a much bigger vehicle that was having the damage that would have caused,
and
to everything surrounding.
Narrow wheelbase, and tall, so whoop. And of course we can swap engines about. There's a whole range of A series. My Traveller now, it's a 54, would have had an 803. When I bought it, it had been changed to 948 and gearbox, but it was beginning to get a bit incontinent. It was leaving its mark, and the engine bay was very oily. So I found I had an engine, an 848, which is the mini block, but for inline, not transverse. And it was fitted to the A35 commercials, the vans in the 64 to 68 period. When we still had separate Austin and Morris dealers and different product lines. And even though the Mini had been introduced in 59 and the van in 61, the Austin dealers still wanted a van of traditional capacity to rival the minor. You've got to have something to compete with the Morris dealers. But they were the same group, it's B and C. And in that period, the standard A-series engine was 1098. The 1100 was introduced from 61-2 onwards. And that in an A35 van, well, it made it a pocket rocket. And we all know how van drivers can drive, let's put it assertively.
That's not changed over the years, has it?
Not changed. And I think there was concern amongst the buyers that these little things were being rolled over. They were being driven beyond their capacity. So you put an 848 in, it was a short stroke engine, more of a slogger. But it wasn't quite, it couldn't be tuned up to MG midget standards, because then you'd have to, and people modify the A35s now, and they've got lower wheels and suspension and so on. But it can be done. It needs a lot of work. You can modify a minor. It still looks like a standard stock cylinder Traveller. Giveaway might be different wheels, wider wheels, but and a slightly more lower stance. But it still looks like a minor. And it doesn't need major modifications. And this 848 engine I have, it's just come back from a trip to Moggy Fest in Dorset, and then on to the Miners on Tour in Normandy and back, and now here it is up in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire borders. When I get home tonight, it will have done 1,000 miles since the 15th of May. And I've put petrol in it. I've checked the oil once and checked the tyre pressures, and one tyre needed £2, or whatever that is in modern parlance. So maintenance is simple, it's easy, shouldn't be neglected. And if you do that, they're a bit like, I hesitate to use the words, a bit like a cockroach.
But it's been said before.
But after nuclear disaster, the miner will still be there along with the cockroach. Basic transportation.
And how many do you think you've had over the years now?
Well, at one time I had 20 at one time. I had storage space. I'm now down to 12.
A very reasonable amount.
But there's a couple of carcasses round the side of my barn, which a friend of mine calls his favourite moggy because he uses it as a parts mine. And it's going to be used again when I go home, because my tuned up miner, it needs a brake part which is unobtainable at the moment. It's being retooled by the supplier, but I'll have to go to the parts mine and extract it.
It's always handy to have.
Very handy, very handy. And there's none of them actually. I've been round the extensive traders here this weekend and nobody has one. I've got one in a car. I said, so have I. I was hoping to avoid that work because it's a bit hot.
Yeah.
And it was very wet beforehand, so I'm just going to have to man up and get round and dig it out.
So talking of National Weekend, how many of those do you think you've been to?
I've been to, since 1990, I've been to most of them, except obviously COVID, and there was one time we were away.
Yeah.
But virtually every one.
Yeah, and what is it about National Weekends that makes you keep coming back?
Socialising, meeting friends, overseas friends. I mean, just on Friday night, I was swept up by Henk from Holland.
Yeah.
And we were sitting outside. There was Henk and myself. You can obviously tell that I'm a Scot of origin. And Henk's Dutch. And there was the representative of the branch from Auckland, New Zealand.
Yeah.
And a Swiss gentleman who'd come from middle Switzerland with his minor traveller. And this was it, international.
Yeah.
We've got people from New Zealand, from Holland, from Germany, from Ireland.
Yeah.
All
over.
All over. United States.
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
Italy, I hear. Luca is here. So, and you sometimes don't see people for 1 or 2 years, and it's just as if you start off as you had left them years previously. My late wife, Rosie, she was well known in the club. She'd been PR officer for 14 years, and she was a bundle of energy, and she'd bounce around like Zebedee all over the place. And we organised 3 of the MOT trips because she loved organising.
Yeah.
But she didn't like speaking, except privately.
Yeah.
But on a mic or a camera, oh no, Sandy will do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I had no notice. So it does sort of sharpen up your instincts and your you learn how to waffle productively and learn when to stop. So Becca's going to tell me to stop anytime soon, I'm quite sure.
Well, have you got, what I'd like to hear just before we wrap up is your best memory related to a Morris Minor, if you can pick one.
Oh, that would have to be when we were invited to participate in the closing ceremony of the 2002 Commonwealth Games in Manchester.
There's been a brilliant display of all the
41
photos
miners.
from that, yeah.
42 actually, because the Millennium Miner Company, they provided a pickup loaded up with spares just in case we had problems on the night. And of course, as anybody who's been there for the closing ceremony or seen it, it was not quite biblical proportions of rain, but it was heavy rain.
Yeah.
And there were 40 miners filled with dancers, pairs of dancers. The miner was chosen by an Australian industrial theatre company because they'd had an excellent experience with miners in the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games in Sydney. And they thought, well, we have something that's quintessentially British, known throughout the world. They thought of Harry Potter, Ford Anglia. There weren't enough of them.
No.
They thought of the Mini, They weren't big enough to hold the 2 dancers to get in and out. The minor, first of all, they wanted 30, and then they wanted 40.
Yeah.
And they wanted another one for the speciality team. I got pointed and fingered for that with the 4-door. And it was Ashley, a character, Scots lass, an actress, and Stephen Arnold and Tracy Shaw, who played Ashley and Maxine in Coronation Street. And they were choreographed by Arlene Phillips.
Yeah.
And did a little event. And I had to drive into an empty stadium after the temples and the paper things that went out, and they said, oh, you pick up your signals from seeing the ground, and then they realised in the rehearsal the lights will be on and you can't see. So when I got back a couple of days later, they put a mic inside the car.
Yeah.
And I was mic'd up.
Yeah.
To get in with an earpiece to get instructions, and it was like a radio-controlled car with me. Now you go, that's the right direction. Steer it. Yes. Okay. Turn and turn, and then when I was to switch off the engine,
Yeah.
which the mic picked up, and then they overlaid the recording of a minor that they'd done during the week.
Yeah.
And Tracy got out of the car and slapped the roof, and then realised that she was in front of the Royal Box with the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh and Tony Blair and Cherie and all the other personalities who were invited. And she did her piece, and they overlaid on the BBC the Coronation Street theme. And I had the cameraman in front of me, and he was saying that fine. And then when I was to start up and were to move, he was getting his instructions, and they got back in the car, and we drove to the edge of the arena and parked up and watched. And then the 40 miners came, 2 columns came in, and then they formed into 4 circles. And they drove round the 4 circles, and then they formed into a big square. And during that, from well, I forget the girl's name. She came in on a big stand. She'd been wheeled in and belting out in the pouring rain, "One Night in Heaven." And when you looked at the close-up and the recording, she's going like this, looking up in the rain, belting down. And then we had nearly 20 minutes of live global television. Yeah. And I thought, heck, if I screw it up coming in or get in the wrong place, I'll be off to the tower. But it worked out. One of the cars, actually, because it was so wet, we'd been security checked and escorted up in motorcycle cops and into the arena. But there was one of them with wipers going and heater and all the rest of it and lights. His battery went out, and he was very unobtrusively by 4 big stewards. They just walked him out. And the Millennium Company supplied a new battery.
Very good.
And they were sorted out. But the cars had to wear nappies underneath.
Oh.
And the Manchester branch and some of the other chappies, they devised, well, we'll get big cardboard sheets, and they used garden ties to tie these to the tie rods at the front and the torsion bars at the cross member at the rear. And that was to stop any oil drips on the special reflective covering on the ground, because they've already sold it. Yeah. And as soon as we were finished on the Sunday, they were in there taking down the temporary seats at one end and digging out the metre thick fill that they'd used to bring the normal surface, up to the level of the seats, the first tier of seats, because this was to be Man City's new ground. And it was ready for the football season in August.
Oh, amazing.
So it was, Manchester gave an excellent impression of hospitality and service. And
Morris Miners did a great job.
Actually, it was one car and one family member only, no partners or wives, except Rosie said, well, if I'm organising this, I'm driving in it. So she drove the split screen Traveller that's here today in one of the circles and performing. and 2 dancers got out. I forget whether she had the dancers in Latin American, what I call the ladies in diaphanous negligence, and the ones who were in evening dress and formal tuxes for the men, but they all got absolutely soaked.
Yeah.
There's 20 couples for each, and there was a bit of formal dancing and waltzing and so on, and then the Latin beat but that was an experience. It gets
what a
me here.
fantastic choice! Yeah.
And Tony Seed of Southport, and he started the organisation because Rosie got the phone call 3 days before we were due to depart to France, and we had to sign confidentiality agreements and couldn't tell anybody what was going on. And then we were a week of rehearsals.
Yeah. And
some of our members who were selected, she used the branch liaison system to contact as many people. Look, there's something happening, we'd like to have it, but I'm told what the restrictions were. I said, oh no, I can't come without my husband, or I can't come without my wife.
Yeah.
But one chappie came, he took unpaid leave from his not very highly paid job for a week till he could participate. And others came, and Manchester was tremendous. Even our club secretary Ray Newell, his car participated, although he was on a cruise in near the Greek islands, and he had somebody drive it for him, and he tuned in. But it was a huge effort from the club members, and we tried to involve as many different areas as we could. Some couldn't or wouldn't, but those who did found it an unforgettable experience.
I can imagine.
It's a one-off.
Yeah, what a brilliant choice.
And that sticks.
Yeah. Well, thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I know you're in high demand, so I'll let you get on to your next engagement for the day.
Thank you very much, Becca. And it's the friendship, and it's the camaraderie, and it's global.
Absolutely.
And we've experienced that, and the minor is known and loved globally. And so it should be, and so it will be.
Agreed. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that, and perhaps heard a story that you hadn't heard before from Sandy if you've had the honour of meeting him, or you've been inspired perhaps to start being more involved with your classic car club, whatever it might be, to start making some fantastic memories just like Sandy and his wife Rosie did over the years. I hope you will join us again next time, where I'll actually be talking about some of what I got up to, as well as this interview over the national weekend with the Morris Minor Owners Club. But in the meantime, thank you ever so much for listening. Drive safely and happy motoring.